It was reported that both presidential campaigns and outside groups have spent just under $1 billion in advertising for this election, so far swaying a total of one undecided voter.
Saturday night, finding the funny side of Mayor Bloomberg's endorsement of President Obama. With the race in a dead heat, will Sandy have the final say on Election Day? Joining me now is Republican pollster Christian Soltis, Vice President of the Winston Group, and Marjorie Clifton, National Editor of GoVote.com. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
We thought in the interest of impartiality, we'd find two people who looked almost identical from either side. So you're in the split screen looking like twins. So there we are. No one can complain. We are not absolutely impartial tonight. Let me start with you, Kristen. Are you feeling confident? I mean, I'm getting a feeling of confidence amongst Republicans, but I sort of assume that everybody on both sides now spends the next 48 hours lying through their back teeth anyway.
I'm gonna be honest with you, Piers. I'm gonna hedge a little bit. I think if you're looking at the polls are consistently showing Obama with a very slight lead in a lot of these swing states. So that makes me nervous. On the other hand, I think that within a lot of these polls, you're seeing Romney win independents by huge margins. That the question is something not adding up? Are the polls missing something? And I think Republicans are looking at these intangibles, right? They're looking at these huge rallies that are showing up for Mitt Romney, this great performance in early voting, and they're saying, this isn't 2008. We feel better about it this time, and they feel good going into Tuesday, and that's why.
I mean, Marjorie Clifton, I certainly feel that on balance, Romney's had the better campaign, I think. I think he's got a bit more momentum through the last month than the president. The president's been helped by the events of last week, the appalling events of the hurricane, because he happens to be president. But if you actually look at the way the campaigns ran, you've got to say that I think Romney's done a pretty good job.
Well, I think absolutely Romney has done a formidable job, which is why we're seeing the candidates neck and neck. But I think all of these great projections and, guesses at who's going to win, there's going to be a lot of walks of shame on Wednesday morning because somebody's not going to come out the winner. And, I look at everyone's mired and obsessed about this polling data back and forth and back and forth. I actually go to 538 Nate Silver's polling data because what he does is he takes all of the different major polls out there and kind of makes this mess of numbers, this soup of numbers, and then adds mathematics and tries to make a guesstimate based on all the polls. What he saw is actually a huge jump over the weekend with an 85% chance of Obama winning the Electoral College. Now, does that mean anything? I don't know. But I will say both candidates, it's the ground game that actually matters. And one fascinating thing I learned this weekend also was that President Kennedy actually campaigned in 49 states. Nixon campaigned in 50 states. Since the Democratic and Republican conventions, our candidates have only campaigned in 10 states. So all this energy is really pouring into the ground game in those key swing states, and I think that's going to be the telling point.
Yeah, but I think Nate Silver, he's a genius. I've had him on a few times. He's fantastic. But it's important to remember, he just is about the law of probability.
Right.
And he's had Romney for the last few weeks now as a probable potential winner, but like 30% and 20%. Well, that's a 1 in 3 chance. If you go to Vegas and a 1 in 3 chance of winning roulette, you'd be very happy. You'd take them to the cleaners. So, I think that people have probably over-analysed this top-line figure for Obama, Kristen Soltis, by saying, well, Nate Silver says 80% probability. Well, yes, but it's not as straightforward as that.
Right. Well, his model is as good as the polls that go into it, right? I mean, he applies some quality control in that, pollsters with better track records get higher, get more value in his model. But the problem is that, if the polls are wrong, then, it's not ultimately going to be his fault on Election Day if Mitt Romney wins. I think so that's why his model is showing such a strong Obama lead. It's because these slight but collective leads in these swing state polls all make his model show that very strong result.
Can we assume, Marjorie, do you think that if Romney was to lose, all the blame will be laid squarely on Hurricane Sandy with a dash of Chris Christie?
Absolutely, because that's the latest and greatest. And, one of the things in that Saturday Night Live skit that I thought was really funny was Mitt Romney saying, but do you remember the first debate? Remember how great I was in the first debate? And it's that we have such a short attention span with these things. But I think when it comes down to it, there's 3 groups of voters that are really going to make all the difference. Absolutely those independents. And we did see Obama go from behind at a double-digit loss up to almost square even as of this weekend. Women, we're seeing a much smaller gap between where women are voting versus Obama and Romney than we saw with McCain and even George W. Bush. And the youth vote, where Obama won by 34% of the youth vote. And actually, there was conventional wisdom that more young people turned out in the last election when actually they didn't. It was about the same numbers. They just won by a greater sweep. But is that same momentum there? Are we going to have the same turnout? That's the big question. I think there's going to be a lot to talk about after this election.
Well, I'm going to go on the record right now on camera and say I haven't got a bloody clue who's going to win. So no one's going to pin on me that I went with one or the other. I've changed my mind more times than I can remember about anything in the last 3 weeks.
I wouldn't put any money down. No money on this one.
It's going to be an exciting night. Marjorie Clifton and Kristen Soldiers, thank you both very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back.